Strap yourselves in. Grab your coffee. It's time for the Chris Salcedo Show on AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas.
And good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. And good evening to all of you watching on the Vida Television Network. Glad you've tuned in to the voice of Texas, AM 700 KSEV. For those of you who may be sampling the program for the very first time, I would like to remind you that the Chris Salcedo Show is also on television, on the Vida Television Network, Roku, Fire Stick, across the country, and broadcast in South Carolina. And we're very happy. By the way, we got some feedback from the TV folks. They liked the Chris Salcedo Show before. Before I was doing a half-hour isolated program for them. It was just me doing basically what I do with all of you here, talking about the news of the day, relating Texas conservative values back to the folks of South Carolina and across the country, across Roku and Fire Stick. And then when I said, you know what, folks, why don't we try this a different way? And we'll start actually giving you folks the radio show unvarnished as it unfolds throughout the day. And that will give us an opportunity to get some listener interaction as well. Well, they bit and they said, yeah, let's go ahead and try that. And here we are. We now, we got the compliment that you folks, your different take on the issues of the day really adds dimension to the program that wasn't there before. And I think that's part of the success of talk radio anyway, is that it allows people to get out there and voice their ideas, whereas mostly elected leaders are just ignoring you. I mean, for the most part, elected leaders just ignore you. Unless you have a big checkbook or unless you're able to cobble together and organize a big enough block of individuals to oppose a political person or a movement. Then they start paying attention to you when you start threatening their ability to hold their specific office. Otherwise, you as an individual, you're ignored. That's why we call this your radio republic. Unlike your current government, your views are heard, listened to, and addressed right here in this program. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. And if it's a good enough question, I'll go and research and I'll find the answer for you. So at any rate, you guys have added a different dimension to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide TV show that airs every single day. And it's got its own YouTube channel and Roku, Fire Stick, and broadcast in South Carolina. So the reason I'm making mention of this right at the top is you folks watching on the Vida Television Network, you're going to hear a bunch of names today that you don't know. You're going to hear a bunch of individuals and things that they have done that may not directly impact you. But chances are you have similar individuals in your precincts, in your districts, in your state. And today we're hoping to provide a roadmap, not the only way forward, but a way forward to deal with individuals. And of course, my primary concern as your liberty-loving Latino is to identify and bring sunlight and daylight to individuals who call themselves Republicans, but who are in actuality Democrats, or worst case scenario, out-and-out liberals. These individuals have more in common with the Democrat Party in the state of Texas than they do with the Republican Party and the conservative movement. So today, we're going to identify them and identify their challengers. I'll start the program off today with a little feedback from yesterday's program. And this is where you come in, because it was brought to my attention that that one reference toward Dan Huberty. Now, those of you on the Vida Television Network won't know who this guy is. Let me give you his resume. He shows up to the Capitol drunk, was captured on videotape, wandering the halls of the Texas State Legislature, drunker than a skunk. So that's character point number one. Character point number 2. He swore that he would never give parents a choice on how to best educate their children. Stood up and said, all of you conservatives who think you're in charge, no, I'm in charge. I'm Dan Huberty. I'm the government. You will not get control over how to best educate your child. Dan Huberty swore. Character point number 3. We had, as many of you around the country know, had a hurricane here in Houston, and the largest to hit the United States. I think it still is the most costly, widespread, damaging hurricane. I think that Puerto Rico didn't eclipse that, although the damage in that small region was more total. We had a wider swath of damage here in the Houston area. So while the floodwaters were still ravaging all over Houston, while people were literally dying, police officers were literally dying in this historic storm, Dan Huberty was calling up not one, but 3 county commissioners demanding, stomping his feet. You know, you could just picture how this phone call went. Give me somebody over here now. Don't you know who I am? I'm Dan Huberty. Get somebody over here to pick up his trash. He wanted trash cleared out of his neighborhood. They hadn't even cleared the bodies out of the water yet. Now, yesterday, I used a descriptor that I was reached out to by an actual conservative who said, you know, doesn't that kind of undermine your argument? If you use language, truthful language about somebody, we said chicken S. No, the S stood for Strauss, but, you know, people drew their own conclusions. Anyhow, and of course, the analogy was brought to me as like, you know, you saw how much grief Donald Trump got for telling the truth about chicken S countries. And we went over this ad nauseum on the Chris Salcedo Show, that it's really the liberals who were the problem there, assuming that because these countries were run by people of color, that's the reason why they were S-hole countries. That was their assumption. You and I both know the reason why is that many of them are left-wingers, like Dan Huberty is, extremist left-wingers like Dan Huberty is. Many of them were despots. Many of them are dictators. Some of them are terrorists. And we already went through this point by point. So I thought about it last night, and I slept on it, as the saying goes. And I said, well, maybe, you know, I don't want to detract from how much of a subhuman individual Dan Huberty is. I don't want to subtract that by making me the story, because the story's not about me. It's about the folks in the 127th district. Oh, I forgot. Character flaw point number 4 for Dan Huberty. He was so afraid of a black conservative challenger who happened to serve this country in uniform, he sued to get him removed from the race and succeeded, but he couldn't remove him from the ballot. So the Chris Salcedo Show is advocating that you vote for Reginald Grant. And my understanding, I've been in contact with some members of that campaign, is that it ain't over. And I actually reached out to some folks yesterday, and some of you reached out to me saying, if the appeal is successful and he wins the election, he could still be seated. So the way the Chris Salcedo Show is going to operate is either way, we're going to continue on the assumption that Reginald Grant, whether he can serve or not, is superior to Dan Huberty because of all of the character flaws that we just outlined. Now, back to where you guys come in. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. seeing as how my rhetoric yesterday truthfully describing Dan Huberty and the reprobate that he is, rubbed some of you conservatives the wrong way. Let me put it up to you guys. Given Dan Huberty's resume, what should we call him? What adjective? Now look, we've got to operate within FCC rules. I know that there are plenty of colorful descriptions you guys can assign to Dan Huberty, and many of you have written me. But a lot of these things I can't say on the air or in polite company. They're all true. Don't get me wrong. They're all true about Dan Huberty. Perfect descriptors. I'm not being critical. I am not being critical of any of you in the audience who have found very apt, very concise, very truthful descriptors of Dan Huberty. It's just stuff that I can't say on the air, which should give all of you folks across the country and across the state of Texas just an idea of how loathsome Dan Huberty is. A wart on the nose of humanity. So let's all of us put together our ideas, put our thinking caps on, and you guys tell me, you know what? Unlike Dan Huberty, we're pretty democratic on this program. We actually believe in leaving it up to the people. So if my descriptor yesterday rubbed you the wrong way, and you have a better adjective to describe this loathsome, subhuman being, this drunkard who takes care of special interests rather than the people's interest of the 127th, call me up. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. We will take all of your submissions throughout the day. Now, I mentioned earlier, folks, that you folks on the Vida Television Network are going to hear a bunch of names today that you don't know. The important thing to focus on is the concepts, is the reason why these names have conservatives' attentions. And this is the nub of it. This is the long and short. Liberals masquerading as Republicans will no longer be tolerated. We're going to find you. We're going to identify you. We're going to make sure folks know that all of your claims of conservatism, all of your claims of being a Republican are just BS. Back in a minute. The Chris Salcedo Show on the Voice of Texas. My good pals at Empower Texans will be here. Now, look, we have races that we're watching in North Texas because the show's in DFW and here in Houston. So we're going to focus on those two areas. And to keep the list as concise as possible, we asked our friends at Empower Texans, just give us the top three. I don't want to give you guys the impression that there are only 6 Republican, or actually Democrats pretending to be Republicans around this state. But I asked for the top 3 races with good, legitimate challengers, and Empower Texans sent me their list, and we'll talk about it coming up later on today. And I imagine some of the people that are on their radar screen are on mine as well. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. We're asking, seeing as how some with very sensitive ears, with, shall we say, defined sensibilities of propriety, didn't like my descriptor of Dan Huberty yesterday. We thought we'd leave it up to this fine audience of well-informed conservatives to come up with a name for Dan Huberty that we can go ahead and use forward, use as a descriptor. You know, kind of like Donald Trump uses for Crooked Hillary, for example, or Crooked Comey, or what did he call Chuck Toomer? Crying Chuck Toomer. What are we going to call Dan Huberty, seeing as how my descriptor, although I must say accurate, 100% spot on and accurate, offended those with sensitive ears? Let me see what you guys have to say. 281-558-5738. John, appreciate you holding. What say you?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Speaker there, I had to be discreet. I'm in the Democratic Republic of Sugarland at the moment.
Oh, geez. Be careful. Are you under surveillance out there?
They may send me to a re-education camp if they catch me on the phone here.
I understand.
Since Mr. Huberty is impulsive, immature, and doesn't ponder consequences, I suggest we call him Dan Puberty.
Dan, see, you know what? One of the individuals who reached out to me yesterday actually suggested that. But by the way, it wasn't you, John, because I don't think you emailed me yesterday. But
no, sir, I did not.
That's interesting. Dan Puberty. Because, well, you see, it doesn't Dan Puberty, though, indicate that he's actually gone through that. And judging by his conduct and judging by his mental acumen or lack thereof, should we call him Dan pre-puberty?
I think Dan Puberty is probably prejudicial enough.
Okay. The thought would be conveyed. Is that what you're saying?
I gave you a fair definition of liberalism there, because they're more worried about what other people think of them.
Well, they're
reality impaired.
Yeah, you know what? One thing you can say about Dan Huberty is he really doesn't care what other people think about him. Have you seen that orange suit that he puts on and wears to the state capitol that makes him look like a dreamsicle? Have you seen that thing? It's peach. He wears a peach 3-piece suit. It is the god-awful ugliest thing I've ever seen a man wear, to be honest with you.
First-degree eye slaughter, huh?
All right. Okay, back underground with you, John, okay? Out there in the People's Republic of Sugarland. We don't need that. We don't need people tracing you back to me, okay? Thank you very much for the call. Kevin, you're up next on the Chris Salcedo Show. What do you say? What?
Chris, how's it going?
You know what? First off, I'm glad you called this morning because you've been on fire lately with your descriptors and your bumper stickers. If those who think out there that Reginald Grant, whether he makes it or not to represent that district, is head and shoulders, that an empty seat is preferable to Dan Huberty, what should we call Dan Huberty?
Man, Chris, I got to tell you, this is one of the hardest assignments you've ever given your listeners, man. Because it's hard to describe him without getting belligerent and vulgar.
I know. I see. You understand my dilemma here. I mean, because his actions are so, well, first off, nowhere near conservatism. His actions are so far out of bounds, out of the realms of normal decorum among human beings. I mean, they're so childlike, almost Obama-esque, if you think about it.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Well, I came up with a couple. We could either call him Lion Dan or No Integrity Huberty, or combine them both, make them multi-use.
No Integrity Huberty. I you know what? That has merit because he has none. If he had any integrity, he'd just say, "Hey, look, folks, I'm really a Democrat."
If he had any integrity, he'd resign from office and get the hell out of our lives.
But see, now he was about ready to do that. My understanding is he had a plush consulting gig. It was going to pay him a lot of money. As a matter of fact, he could buy off a couple of county commissioners and have them take out his trash for him if he wanted to. He'd been making a lot of money. But that fell through. So the people of Texas in the 127th are second up. They're the consolation prize.
Well, as far as puberty goes, I mean, the guy could be the poster boy for birth control.
Now, I see. Even that's a little too personal for me. I don't want to think about. I have a hard time thinking about Dan Huberty fully clothed. Thinking about him. Forget about it. No, I ain't going there. Kevin, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Louis, you're up next on the Chris Salcedo Show. Dan Huberty, what should we call this guy?
Are you talking about Otis Campbell, the town drunk?
Otis Campbell. We ought to call him Otis Campbell. That's not a bad idea, the town drunk.
You ever seen he gets into a cow thinking it's a horse. and walks in and you see him on the Andy Griffith show.
I remember. Yes, I know. I'm surprised I know it, but I know the reference.
But at least Otis Campbell is more conservative than he is.
Yeah, well, then there's that. I get you there.
But I like that. I was thinking about something. He reminds me of Otis Campbell, this guy.
Otis Campbell. Well, we won't even use his. We won't even use his name. See, the problem is, I need Dan Huberty to own all of his reprobate acts. I need him. I need him to own his leftist, left wing, big government, anti-conservative positions. So far up Joe Strauss's rear end, he could give him a colonoscopy. I need him to own that.
We got to clean up the legislature and get some good people in there.
I agree.
I like that lady named Hoffman. Her name is Susan.
Susan Hoffman? Yeah.
Yeah, I like her. We got to start getting some good people in there. Let's get some real conservative values in there.
I'm with you, man. And that's part of the whole agenda of the program today is to do that. Louis, great.
Right.
Oh, great suggestion. Otis Campbell, the town drunk. Well, you know, I can almost buy it. You know, you can never go wrong with Mayberry references, so long as we can trace it back to Dan Huberty. Maybe Dan Huberty, the town drunk, or there's a village missing an idiot somewhere. We'll think on it. We'll get more of your recommendations coming up. The Chris Salcedo Show on The Voice. 281-558-5738. Louise, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, how are you, Chris?
I'm doing well, man. What's going on?
Hey, one of the things I hear you and Hannity and all the other conservative commentators talk about how it's only at the high levels that there's this government corruption, just the political appointees. Look, I've been in the military for many years, and I've worked in the big combatant commands in DOD. And let me tell you, what do you think they do when they get those political appointments? They hire legions of rank and file of, first and foremost, political loyalty is what's most important. And I'll tell you, I worked out of an embassy in Central America when George Bush was a president, and I was shocked at all the pictures of Bill Clinton that were just all throughout the whole, throughout the whole embassy. So your comment that, hey, individual, the rank and file workers and all that are all, law-abiding law enforcement. I'm here to tell you, Chris, from my experiences, that's not the case.
Well, hold on. It's Lewis, right? Not Louise. It's Lewis.
Right.
Lewis, look,
right.
I want to tell you that the dynamic you're talking about is true. That these individuals tend to insulate themselves once you get a political appointee from, let's say, a President Obama. That's the cancerous tumor, and that tumor is going to spread. It's going to hire other to protect him or herself. But there's no way
are not political appointees. Those people are in there.
No, I understand that, but hear me out. There's no way that those political appointees are going to be able to displace all the other career guys who were put in there by a previous administration who maybe had more integrity. So whereas I would say their immediate circle is just as corrupt as they are, you cut off the head of the snake, and guess what? And we're seeing it right now, Lewis, with individuals now. Let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence, and then we can debate this. What we're seeing it right now that Barack Obama is gone and he's no longer there to protect the Andrew McCabe's and the James Comeys and the Robert Muellers and all of their lieutenants. He's not there anymore. And now all of a sudden you start seeing these other people coming out, these informants going to Congress saying, this is what's going on. I couldn't step out before and tell you guys for fear that I was going to be targeted, lose my pension and all this kind of stuff. But there's no way you're going to be able to infect the entire institution, only key aspects. But go ahead. Give me your take.
Okay, Chris, I think you're wrong because I'll tell you and I'm telling you from my experience, okay, and anecdotal in a sense, but I'll tell you when I was in one of the major combatant commands, I was shocked, even in the IT department, okay, where you figure, okay, an IT guy, first and foremost, he's got to have the credentials and all that. Yes, they did, but the outward, now, of course, this was during the Obama administration when I was there, the outward liberalism of the individual rank and file IT employees was astounding. And all these guys are all government, are now GS employees that are there for the life. So why do you think, and I'm sure, and look, one of my fellow officers that I worked with was in the FBI. He's a reservist and then he, do active duty. He told me when we were talking about the lowest learner issue, there's a lot of, he said that could have not happened without a lot of rank and file IRS agents at least turning a blind eye and putting grease on the wheels. And I saw a lot of that down in DOD.
No, and look, Louis, I want to, because I think you make some very good points, but you've said it a couple of times, so I want to address it. You said these people who are liberals and have liberal biases. That's okay to be a government worker and be a conservative or be a liberal. That's okay. What's not okay is when you start violating the law and violating the Constitution, when you act on your political biases. That's what's not permitted. So there's nothing wrong with having, and you know what, by the very nature of it being government, you're going to have people who skew left, who love big government. That's going to be a natural consequence. It's part of the natural consequence of massive unaccountable government. That's going to be the case. You're going to find more liberals than you are going to find conservatives because liberals find themselves in government a lot. But
put it this way, Chris.
But there's a difference there's a difference between being liberal and breaking the law and violating people's constitutional rights.
Correct. But this is the difference. This is the difference that, this FBI agent that I spoke with, that it gets down to it. Okay, what Lois Lerner did, this is a great example. Okay, think of it. No leaks from within the IRS that this was occurring from rank and file, because they were like, okay, it doesn't affect me. Me personally, I'm not doing anything illegal, but I know in the spirit of the law it's illegal, but I'm not going to say anything. If that would have been a conservative, something to do with conservatism, if it would have been the other way around, Chris, man, they would have leaked it. They would have, send the infamous mailer, without return address, none of that. Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's
no, exactly I'm not disputing at all what you're saying about the disposition of people. I have known liberals who are committed to being fair. I've also known liberals who are committed to cheating. So,
but Chris, you see, I think, and on that, Chris, I think you're wrong. That's like saying I'm socially liberal, but I'm fiscally conservative.
No, wait a minute.
That's an oxymoron.
No. Because being liberal doesn't mean you're willing to violate the law.
Yeah, but being, when you're a liberal, you believe that big government is the be all and end all. It's an end to itself.
Yes.
And therefore, any justification to get there is authorized.
Well, wait a minute. No. See, now, and that's where there are those, like for example, I know some teachers who are liberals in government-run schools, and they when they see other teachers bringing their politics, besmirching the good name of other teachers by trying to indoctrinate kids in class, they recoil. It's possible to do your job and not let your politics get in the way. I know some journalists who are liberal, but try to play it straight down the middle because that's their job. But
correct, but I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah,
but that's not the norm. Yeah,
well,
sure. There's onesies and two. That's like saying, that's like
Louis,
saying.
I hear exactly what you're saying. I just think that we've got to be careful. I resist criminalizing conservatism because that's what our opposition wants to do. I don't want to criminalize liberalism. I just don't want them elected, and I don't want them in positions of power to make decisions. That's all.
Well, the whole point, the point that I'm making, the ultimate point that the way to get out of this is fundamentally is to have smaller governments. Just don't have.
I agree.
These massive bureaucracies. Okay.
Well, Louis, here let's. I got the music playing, but let's you and I agree on the Salcedo Show axiom. It is best not to give government more power lest it be abused, and that's what you and I are talking about. Smaller, accountable government, so that these people can't step out of line without us knowing about it. I agree. You and I can agree on that. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. More of your calls coming up. The Chris Salcedo Show on the Voice of Texas. Hey, folks, yesterday I had the chance to talk to a sitting congressman about all of these text messages that are missing, the secret society in the FBI, all of these shenanigans back during the Obama era that seem to lead to corruption at the highest level of this government. We talked to this congressman yesterday, and here's how the conversation went.
Top officials in the FBI knew
210-3028. That's 817-210-3028.
WVAP can be heard on FM at 99.5 FM HD2.
To see if you have HD radio and to learn how to program it, go to WBAP.com/FM. News Talk 820 WBAP.
Wherever you want us.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad you've tuned in. I am your liberty-loving Latino. Do not confuse me with loudmouth leftist Latinos out there. I actually love my country. Did you hear this yesterday?
top officials in the FBI knew that Loretta Lynch knew before she said that she was going to let Comey decide that he wasn't going to prosecute. He wasn't going to press charges at all. And then Comey later testified that there was no coordination between the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch, and the FBI. You know, so that is coming into question. So what this is all about is further evidence of corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that.
Yes.
That's Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Let's talk about this with Congressman John Ratcliff, the congressman representing the 4th Congressional District right here in the great state of Texas, serves on the House Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees. He's also the chairman of the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Protection and Security Technologies Subcommittee. Mr. Ratcliff, welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, Chris, good to be with you.
Let me go through some headlines, and I'll get you to comment on what the senator had to say and these headlines. FBI secret society met day after the election. Mystery of missing text messages grows. Jaw-dropping revelations. Agent texted about deleting texts. This is all very troubling. Now, we have thought, Congressman, you've been on the show before, and you know how we believe that Barack Obama was doing some shady and illegal and unconstitutional things, turning America's intelligence agencies and the apparatus in Washington, D.C. designed to protect us, turning it against us. This is scary stuff.
Yeah. So, Chris, as some of your viewers may know, I'm on a task force that's looking into these matters, and I'm one of the few members that's been able to view all of these texts. So, yeah, I have seen the words secret society in the immediate aftermath of Donald Trump's election used by FBI agents and lawyers at the highest level, actually involved in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And, yeah, so, right now we're all speculating on what those terms mean and the context in which they've been used. But what I can tell your viewers is, having looked at thousands of text messages, it's not just a few one-off comments. There are literally dozens and dozens of incredibly troubling text messages that show really more than just an expressed bias against Donald Trump and for Hillary Clinton, but express an intent to influence the outcome of the presidential election.
Now, if Russia attempted to interfere with an election is bad, when officials in our own government are trying to interfere with an election, that's equally bad. Let me ask you about Peter Strzok's text messages that we do know, and we'll get to the ones that we don't know. But the Peter Strzok had observed that he was troubled the Bob Mueller investigation wouldn't turn up anything that they could pin on Donald Trump. He was afraid. This FBI agent, which is supposed to be the arbiter of just getting to the facts and making sure justice is served, he was openly worried that Donald Trump, there was no there, in his words. Is this the caliber that we want in the leadership of the FBI?
Well, we don't. I worked at the Justice Department. I was U.S. Attorney, federal prosecutor, terrorism prosecutor. Worked closely, with FBI agents, and for the comfort of your viewers, it's populated with just fantastic people that want to serve our country. But, in every barrel, there's going to be bad apples. And what's troubling here is the worst, most rotten apples happen to be involved in some of the most important investigations at the highest level. And that's really the challenge that we face at this point. And to the context of what you just read, Chris, I do think that it's very clear that Agent Strzok in particular, the context was he was being asked to join the Mueller investigative team, and he was contemplating whether it was a good move. And so he did use that term. You and I both know that there's probably nothing there. There's no there. And, I still feel this, but at the same time, I feel this unfinished business from he makes a reference to the Hillary Clinton investigation, the mid-year exam, as they called it.
Wow.
And trying to finish it and fix it. All of that in the context of, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle saying, oh, these are just tongue-in-cheek or they're taken out of context. But in one of the very next texts about this, the response is, we can't be talking about this here. We need to go offline.
Yeah.
So, all of these things, again, I'm the one that wants to give the FBI and the Department of Justice the benefit of the doubt. And like I said, the good news for people is, as organizations, they're largely populated with great people. I do think, Chris, that the concern that we have, and one thing that I heard after I left at the end of the Bush administration, was that what the Obama administration was trying to do was to populate the upper ranks with folks that shared one ideology, more of a progressive ideology, and put those folks in leadership position. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Right. And you heard Senator Johnson say they have an informant, and I would expect that informant is part of the good men and women that you made reference to, part of our intelligence community that are pro-American, and they're not committed leftists like the political appointees of Barack Obama, who he in my view, infected our intelligence agencies with, infected our national defense apparatus with, these people who were decidedly anti-American. The rank and file in the CIA, the rank and file in the FBI, who are pro-American, they now feel safe with people like you in charge, with people like Donald Trump in charge, to come out and tell the truth about what Barack Obama's political appointees were doing. John Ratcliff, congressman from the 4th Congressional District, is our guest right now. 50,000 text messages for over 5 months have gone missing. And the FBI is telling us, oh, this was just an accident, just like Lois Lerner's emails, just an accident. Congressman, let me ask you point blank. Do you believe the FBI when they say that 50,000 text messages over this key crucial time when Donald Trump was elected just went up and missing? Do you believe this story?
Well, as I told you, given the background of where I am, I want to believe it. I do know that things can happen, but here's the problem, Chris, is if it was just one incident, that'd be one thing. But as you've related, it's one unfortunate coincidence or accident after another.
Mm-hmm.
And so, these are surrounding texts at a critical time. I mean, right after the ones that I related to you and right after Strzok actually joined the Mueller investigation team, those are the ones that are missing. Is it a coincidence that the same bad actors, Peter Strzok, ended up on both the Hillary Clinton investigation and the investigation into Donald Trump? Is it a coincidence that Barack Obama used the word careless and said that Hillary Clinton didn't have intent to damage national security a month before FBI Director James Comey wrote a memo that said she was careless and didn't have the intent to harm national security? I mean, all of these coincidences make it hard for even people like me that worked with the Bureau and worked at the Department of Justice to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I will tell you that to follow up on the earlier point, I have a call with Senator Johnson a little bit later this morning to follow up on some of the things that you just related about, more details about what may have happened off-site with a group of folks.
Tell your office to stay in touch with the show. We'll get you back on if any breaking details. And I'm sorry, Congressman, we need a second special counsel investigation to ferret out the corruption of the Obama administration. John Ratcliff, everybody, 4th Congressional District here in the great state of Texas. Sir, we always appreciate you being here, and it's always great to catch up. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Chris.
Get ready for the next generation of talk radio. It's time for politics, pop culture, and proud pro-American conservatism. Strap yourselves in. Grab your coffee. It's time for the Chris Salcedo Show on AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas.
All right, welcome everybody to the Chris Salcedo Show. Hour 2 is underway of the program. Those of you waiting on hold, stick with me. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. The mission is simple. Identify those who are calling themselves Republicans, who are actually Democrats and liberals, and make sure those who have credible good challengers are defeated so that we can increase conservative representation in Austin. And for those of you out there who are more moderates, I'm sorry, I'm just not with you. I'm a conservative. I'm going to advocate for conservative individuals. And those who say that there's, well, you know what, let's just find a middle ground, a little bit of cancer. Sorry, I'm not there. Conservatism is the answer. Conservatism is what gets us to a better Texas and to a better country. So that's where I'm at. And I am going to do my darndest to make sure that those who say they belong to the conservative party and don't behave as they are, I will call them out. To that end, I'm bring on Michael Quinn Sullivan, president of Empower Texans. Premier project of theirs, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. He's a former newspaper reporter, a Capitol Hill staffer, think tank vice president, and Eagle Scout. Sir, welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, Chris, it's great to be with you this morning.
Now, we're going to talk about several topics, so we're going to try to not breeze through this because we want to have why some of these individuals are on your radar screen, but there's some other things I want to talk about in one race in particular. But we asked you at Empower Texans to give us on the Chris Salcedo Show your top 3 individuals who you would like to see gone out of Austin because they, as I mentioned, they're fake conservatives. They're fake Republicans. They have more in common with the Democrat Party than they do with the Republican Party. And so you guys sent us this list, and I've got to be honest with you. Some of them aren't even on our radar screen, so I'm going to ask you to tell us about them. And then we've got some other things to talk about as well, in particular what's going on with one of these races that has your attention and our attention. So we'll start off in Houston first. Go down the list and tell us which races are on your radar screen, the top 3.
Well, look, I think everyone has to be paying attention to the Sarah Davis, incumbent Sarah Davis list. She ranks below several Democrats on both the Fiscal Responsibility Index, on a rating done by Rice University. Governor Greg Abbott has endorsed Sarah Davis's opponent, Susanna Dockupul. Mm-hmm. It's an incredibly important race. Sarah Davis is one of those Republicans who at home likes to talk about how, yeah, she's a little bit of a social moderate, but really I'm a fiscal conservative, when in fact there is nothing conservative. She's not even a moderate on social issues, and she's certainly not a conservative on fiscal issues.
Yeah, let me stop you there because we've gone over her stated positions and where we can agree. I can't think of one major issue where Sarah Davis and I agree, whether it's the size of government's role in the people's lives, whether it's Planned Parenthood. As a matter of fact, she invited Planned Parenthood into her district, celebrating the taking of human life in utero. And it's like, man, okay, let me say this about Sarah Davis. If she were the fiscal conservative she claims to be, I'd be with her. I mean, just because I have a lot of conservative friends who don't want to get involved in the abortion debate, and that's fine. I'm not a single issue voter, but man alive, you go down the list and you can't find a single conservative bona fide in Sarah Davis.
That's absolutely right. And again, and you see that in every single issue. You cannot find an issue where she is even approaching the mainstream of Republican thought, let alone anything.
No, she's a fantastic Democrat. She's a mainstream Democrat, but she's a lousy Republican. Faircloth. Now this is a name that's not on my radar screen. What's up with this race?
Yeah, so Wayne Faircloth, he kind of falls in the category of probably a nice guy, but he does absolutely nothing. He comes from a solidly conservative district, and yet he literally does nothing. There are members of the legislature who were unaware that he was a legislator. Greg Abbott, again, similar to Sarah Davis, Greg Abbott has endorsed the opponent because a lot of folks look at that race and see that's a district that should be held by a fighter. That should be held by a district. The district should be held by someone who is going to be engaged much more vocally and much more actively than Wayne Faircloth. And so a fellow by the name of Mays Middleton, a young businessman, he and his wife and a couple of kids made the decision that Mays needed to run. He needed to serve his community, and it's a race that looks like it's probably going to be. It's a question of whether Mays is going to win 60-40 or 70-30. That's a district where you see all these voters who have been for now several terms incredibly frustrated that they just don't have a voice. It's not that Wayne Faircloth is necessarily a liberal; it's that he's not there. He just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, so he just goes along with the Strauss anti-conservative party line. Dan Hubert, and it sends a message to other members that it's very easy to get lazy and lackadaisical, and to stop thinking, stop acting. This is a good reminder. No, you're actually required to do your job. Yeah, and Faircloth, what district is that? I'm sorry, I don't have the district number in front of me. I will find that really quick. I apologize. No, it's all right. Well, anyway, so Faircloth is the name. And again, if you are, folks are, you guys in his district will know who you are. If this is you, it's about time, if you're a conservative, that you had some sort of representative who wasn't going along to get along. Not that everybody needs to be a star and stand out. I mean, you don't want the kind of pub that Sarah Davis or Dan Huberty gets, but stand up once in a while, take a stand on a conservative principle, and make sure that you're there going to bat for your constituents. So Dan Huberty is your third race, yes?
Yeah, Faircloth is District 23.
There's not a candidate against Dan Huberty at this point. A judge decided Dan Huberty didn't want to be challenged, so Dan Huberty got his lawyer to challenge Reginald Grant, who was running against him. Got a judge to kick him off without. Think about this. This is an African American Marine turned school teacher, right? Wow. Solid conservative. Dan Huberty didn't want to face him, and so Grant had been involved in the divorce, and so Huberty used the fact that Grant's ex-wife lived out of district as the reason, most spacious logic you've ever heard. Wow. So that race is now not going to happen. We're continue to act like it is a race. Because me too. There need to understand that Dan Huberty is a slime ball, caught on video doing, bad things. He's a fellow who votes bad, killed school choice, bad on property tax reform. He needs to go. It's just going to be in 2 years. Yeah. By the way, we've before you got on this morning, we were actually some folks with virgin ears took offense to my referencing, and we're going to go over Dan Huberty in greater detail so that folks around Texas know exactly what kind of a reprobate this guy is. But we're looking for a different adjective that I don't know was more pleasing to the virgin ears of some people who didn't like us referring to him as Chicken S. Dan Huberty, in keeping with what the president had to say about certain countries around the globe who have been run into the ground. So we're looking for a different adjective to describe Mr. Huberty. I think you found one. Slimeball kind of works. Let's go up to North Texas, because these individuals in North Texas impact individuals in Houston, and Houston actually impacts North Texas because they all side with Joe Strauss, and they all side with the Democrats against conservative agenda items. Charlie Guerin is on your radar screen. Why? Yes, so Charlie Guerin, he's the enforcer thug for the Strauss regime. He chairs a committee that no human being has to deal with or been around. It's called the Administration Committee. But that's the committee in which members have to go hat in hand to make sure that staff get paid, to make sure that they have computers in their office and that they can have office space and all these kind of the mundane tasks, and he lords over them. So one, there's this problem that he's the thug enforcer for the Strauss regime. Two, he's just bad on the issues, whether you're talking fiscal issues, social issues. He is not with conservatives. He takes a certain amount of pride even in rubbing everyone's nose in the fact that he can take whatever position he wants, and it doesn't matter because he owns the Railhead barbecue steakhouse, and people love his family, so he can do whatever he wants. And then as a result, it's been bad for taxpayers in Texas.
Sounds like John McCain. Sheffield's race.
He, in very many ways, he is the John McCain of the Texas legislature.
Gotcha.
That is probably the single best analogy.
All right. Sheffield up in North Texas.
Yeah, so J.D. Sheffield, his district goes from Stephenville out a little west. J.D. Sheffield, again, like Sarah Davis, there are Democrats who rate better than he does on both fiscal and social issues. Sheffield, in fact, when he first ran for office, many people in that district were surprised he was running as a Republican, because in conversations and things, they just assumed he was your run-of-the-mill Democrat.
Gotcha.
And he is your run-of-the-mill Democrat. He
right.
just happens to have an R next to his name.
All right, and the last race we want to focus on in DFW is a person I know very well, is Jason Villalba, who is on your radar screen. Now, look, I think he's stepped out of line a couple of times. For example, trying to restrict free speech rights for those watching police actions, trying to keep people away from filming police actions. I mean, that was pretty Gestapo-like in my view. I mean, free societies don't do that to the freedom of the journalism or just freedom of individuals to keep their government in check. What other things has Jason done that's on your radar screen?
Well, again, his record on everything from property rights to education reform is abysmal. Add to it, his representational quality lacks something to be desired. He's one of these fellows who loves nothing more than taking to Twitter after a few drinks and insults his constituents. I mean, he literally, will direct nasty comments at constituents who are asking questions, even people who aren't actually disagreeing with him, but asking questions. I mean, he's rather unstable. But then you compile that with a voting record that is not representative of his district and certainly not representative of conservatives or Republicans in Texas, which is why Lisa Luby Ryan has done such a fantastic job of drawing big in-district donors. Brent Ryan, one of the big kind of movers and shakers, I think he's a fairly decent fellow, not exactly an ideological giver. He is her finance chair, a big name in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Mm-hmm. Just go down the line of the endorsement she's received in district from people who generally don't endorse against an incumbent, and yet they're endorsing Lisa. She's going to be very good, and Jason is just so bad. All
right. So, and by the way, who was Sheffield's challenger?
A fellow by the name of Chris Evans. Now, this is not Chris Evans, Captain America, but maybe he's Chris Evans, Captain Texas, perhaps.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Fantastic young guy, hardworking businessman. So I think he's going to be giving J.D. Sheffield a retirement present.
By the way, 23rd District was Faircloth, by the way, in the Houston area, just so you have that top of mind.
Appreciate that.
No problem. Michael Quinn Sullivan and Power Texans, our guest right now. I want to focus in on one race because this one's going to take a bit of strategy. It's the Dan Huberty race. For those of you who have not heard the stories about Dan Huberty, he shows up to work drunk in the state capitol. There's video of him doing that. Because he feared a black conservative Marine who wore the uniform of this country and sacrificed his life because he feared an actual conservative black school teacher going up against him. He sued and got him thrown out of the race, although it's on appeal from my understanding, Michael. So a vote for Reginald Grant still is a vote against Dan Huberty, who should not be allowed to go back to the State House. We know about Huberty's track record on taxes, as you mentioned, abysmal. We know about what he did about school choice. He basically stood up and said, every parent who wants school choice around Texas, screw you, I know better. That's exactly, not exactly in those words, but he said he guarantees that nobody will have a choice in Texas schools. And lastly, and I know that you know about this story, and many folks around this area, but maybe the rest of Texas doesn't know. At the height of Hurricane Harvey, while people were literally dying in the streets of Houston, Dan Huberty was lobbying 3 county commissioners to get county resources diverted to his home to pick up his trash. It is this kind of individual doesn't belong dog catcher anywhere, much less in the State House.
Yeah, an absolute abuse of authority. And it'd be one thing if that were kind of in the heat of a in the crisis, and you kind of make a weird bad decision bad enough. But yet you look at Dan Huberty, a fellow who seems to constantly be on the wrong side of ethical questions when it comes to how he uses his office. And during the hurricane, when the city of Houston had dump trucks and all the city vehicles out, navigating water, saving people's lives, Dan Huberty wanted those resources diverted to pick up his family garbage. Just like you say, a person like that shouldn't be in the legislature, and then it's just compounded by his bad policy positions. He literally takes the worst possible position on any issue that you come up against, except, he is pro-life. I have to give him that. He is pro-life, but on everything else, he just works against taxpayers.
Unless that life needs saving in floodwaters of Houston, then he's not so much pro-life. If the trash collectors had gone there to pick up his family's trash, they might have saved us all and taken Mr. Huberty out with the rest of the trash. Michael Quinn Sullivan, everybody. He's the president of Empower Texans. Premier project is Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. Thanks for the visit, man. We appreciate it. We'll keep you guys on with us all the way up to the primary. The mission, get rid of liberals who are calling themselves Republicans, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thank you. That's going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide for this evening on the Vida Television Network. Weigh in anytime on the program on Twitter at Chris Salcedo TX. And you can leave voicemail or email at chrissalcedo.com. We'll see you next time for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the Vida Television Network.